I was sitting in a metal chair that felt colder than the room itself, my hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee I hadn't taken a single sip from. It had gone cold a long time ago, but I hadn't noticed. Across the table, the detective watched me carefully, like she was afraid I might shatter if she spoke too loudly. "If you had opened that box," she said slowly, "you wouldn't be sitting here right now." That sentence kept echoing in my head, over and over, louder than the hum of the fluorescent lights above us. I nodded. But the truth was, my body still hadn't caught up with what my mind already knew. I had been minutes, maybe seconds, away from dying. And the most terrifying part was how ordinary everything had felt just before it almost happened. 3 weeks earlier, my life was painfully normal. I'm Emily Carter. I'm 33 years old, and I teach 3rd grade at a public elementary school in Madison, Wisconsin. My biggest worries used to be lesson plans, overdue library books, and whether my students' parents would actually read the emails I sent home. I lived in a quiet neighborhood, drank the same coffee every morning, and believed, naively, that danger always announced itself loudly. It doesn't. The day everything began, I was in the middle of helping a student tie her shoes when the school secretary appeared at my classroom door. She didn't interrupt. She just caught my eye and mouthed, "You need to come with me." Something in her face made my stomach tighten. The phone call was brief and professional. A lawyer, a calm voice, condolences. My Aunt Eleanor had passed away the previous Tuesday. I remember lowering myself into a chair because my knees suddenly didn't feel strong enough to hold me. Aunt Eleanor was the only person in my family who had ever really seen me. She remembered my favorite books, showed up to my college graduation when no one else did, and called me every Sunday just to ask if I was eating enough. Losing her felt like losing my last anchor. Then the lawyer said the words that changed everything. "She left you her entire estate." I laughed at first, a quiet, shocked laugh that didn't feel like it belonged to me. There had to be a mistake, but there wasn't. The total came close to $1 million, along with a collection of antique music boxes she'd spent decades restoring. I went home that night numb, grief and disbelief tangled together so tightly I couldn't separate them. I told my husband, Daniel, and he hugged me for a long time without saying a word. The next morning, my phone rang. It was my brother. Ryan and I shared blood, but not much else. He was older, louder, and always convinced the world owed him something. We hadn't spoken in months, but suddenly his voice was warm, almost sweet. I heard about Aunt Eleanor," he said. "Tragic. I assume we'll split everything fairly, right?" When I told him what the lawyer had said, that the will left everything to me, the silence on the line stretched until it felt aggressive. Then his tone changed, sharp, bitter. "That doesn't make sense," he snapped. "She must have been confused. I'm her nephew. I deserve something." That was the moment a small, quiet alarm went off in my head. I ignored it. After that call, things started to feel off. I noticed the same car parked down the street more than once. I got calls where no one spoke on the other end. Our trash bin was knocked over, papers scattered like someone had been digging through them. When I mentioned it to Daniel, he didn't brush it off. "Trust your instincts," he said. "Something isn't right." I wanted to believe it was grief making me paranoid. I wanted my life to go back to normal. Then, one Thursday afternoon, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a delivery driver holding a large, beautifully wrapped box. It was heavier than it looked when I signed for it. Polished wood, brass corners, expensive. The return name made my heart stutter. Ryan Carter. There was a card attached. His handwriting was dramatic, exaggerated, like it always had been. "Congratulations, Em. You deserve this. Let's put the past behind us." Daniel walked in just as I set the box down on the kitchen island. He took one look at it and frowned. "When has your brother ever apologized?" he asked. I didn't have an answer. I just remember standing there, staring at that box, unaware that my entire life was balanced on the choice I was about to make. The lawyer's call didn't end when he told me about the inheritance. He kept talking, about paperwork, timelines, signatures, but I barely heard him. All I could think about was Aunt Eleanor's voice, warm and steady, the way she used to say my name like it was something fragile she wanted to protect. Nearly $1 million, cash, accounts, and her collection of antique music boxes, the ones she spent decades restoring, each with its own soft, haunting melody. It felt unreal, like someone had accidentally dropped another person's life into my hands. I hung up and sat there in silence until the school bell rang and jolted me back into my classroom. My students were lining up, arguing over whose turn it was to carry the clipboard, completely unaware that my world had just cracked open. That night, I told Daniel everything. He listened without interrupting, his face unreadable. When I finished, he said quietly, "That kind of money doesn't just change lives. It changes people." I didn't understand how right he was. The news spread faster than I expected. I hadn't told anyone except Daniel and the principal, but families have a way of finding out. By the next morning, my phone lit up with messages from relatives I barely spoke to anymore. Condolences mixed with thinly veiled curiosity. Ryan called before noon. His voice was syrupy, almost affectionate, the way it gets when he wants something. I heard about Aunt Eleanor. That's rough. She was something else." I waited. "So," he continued, clearing his throat, "I assume we'll sit down with the lawyer and split things evenly. I mean, family is family, right?" I took a breath. "The lawyer said the will leaves everything to me." The pause on the line felt heavy. Then his tone sharpened, like a blade finally showing itself. "That doesn't make sense," he snapped. "She had to be confused. She was old, Emily. Old people get manipulated." "She wasn't confused," I said, my voice shaking despite myself. "This is what she wanted." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You? With that money? You'd waste it on school supplies and charity junk. I'm the one who knows how to handle things." When I didn't respond, his anger spilled over. He called Aunt Eleanor names I won't repeat. He said I'd always been the favorite, the weak one people felt sorry for. When he hung up, my hands were trembling. Daniel found me sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone. "That bad?" he asked. I nodded. "He thinks I stole something that belongs to him." That was the night I didn't sleep. Over the next few days, little things started happening. Things that were easy to dismiss, if you wanted to. A car I didn't recognize parked down the street when I left for work, still there when I came home. My phone buzzing late at night with no one on the other end when I answered. Once, I found our trash bin tipped over, envelopes torn open like someone had been searching for something specific. "Maybe it's coincidence," I said, more to myself than to Daniel. He didn't look convinced. "I used to tell soldiers the same thing," he replied. "Coincidences don't repeat." One evening, our neighbor Mrs. Lawson caught me by the mailbox. She leaned in and lowered her voice. "I don't mean to alarm you, dear, but that man in the gray sedan was parked outside your house for over an hour yesterday, just sitting there." My stomach dropped. "Did he come to the door?" She shook her head. "No, he drove off when your husband got home." That night, Daniel double-checked the locks. He didn't say anything dramatic, didn't tell me to panic, but I saw the way his shoulders tensed, the way his eyes kept drifting to the windows. I thought about Aunt Eleanor then, about the last time I saw her, how she'd held my hand a little too tightly and said, "Some people don't love you. They love what you can give them." At the time, I'd smiled and told her not to worry. Now, sitting in my quiet house with the lights on and the curtains drawn, I realized something had already crossed a line. The inheritance wasn't just money anymore. It was a spark, and someone was watching to see how it burned. The package arrived on a Thursday afternoon, just after 3. I remember the time because I'd checked the clock, thinking about how Daniel would be home soon, how I could finally stop pretending everything felt normal. The doorbell rang once, sharp, confident, not the hesitant press of a neighbor. Through the peephole, I saw a delivery driver holding a large, carefully wrapped box. Polished wood gleamed beneath layers of cream-colored paper and a gold ribbon. It looked expensive, thoughtful, almost gentle. I signed without thinking. The moment I lifted it, my arms tensed. The box was heavier than it should have been, far heavier. As I carried it to the kitchen island, a name on the return label made my chest tighten. Ryan Carter. There was a card attached. His handwriting hadn't changed since high school. Dramatic, looping, like he wanted every word to be noticed. "Congratulations, Em. You deserve this. Let's start fresh. Love, Ryan." I stared at it longer than I should have. For a brief, dangerous second, I wanted to believe him. Daniel walked in from the garage, wiping grease off his hands. He stopped short when he saw the box. "What's that?" he asked. My brother sent it, I said. I think he's apologizing. Daniel didn't smile. He stepped closer, resting a hand on the edge of the island. When has Ryan ever apologized for anything? I didn't answer. He leaned down, studying the box more closely. This is solid wood, mahogany maybe. He nudged it gently, just enough to test the weight. Something's off. I laughed nervously. You're overthinking it. No, he said. You're underthinking it. He lifted the box slightly, tilting it. The weight's wrong. It's all concentrated in the center. And listen. Listen to what? He tilted it again. There was a faint shift inside. Not a rattle, not a clunk. Something subtle, alive. Then I smelled it. A sharp chemical tang, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. My stomach dropped. Daniel set the box down carefully. Don't touch it. I felt stupid, standing there with my hands still hovering near the latch. It's just a box. Emily, he said quietly, there are tiny holes carved into the sides. I looked closer. The decorative patterns, vines, flowers, weren't just ornamental. They were precise, uniform, intentional. They're ventilation holes, Daniel said. Whatever's inside needs air. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I reached for the latch without thinking. Daniel grabbed my wrist. Don't open it, he said, his voice sharper now. Promise me. What do you think is in there? I whispered. I don't know, he replied, but I know it's not safe. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911. While we waited, time stretched painfully thin. The box sat there between us, silent, innocent-looking. I kept imagining Ryan's voice on the phone, his laugh, the way he'd said I didn't deserve the money. The police arrived quickly, 2 patrol cars, then another unmarked vehicle. The detective, a woman with tired eyes and a calm voice, asked us to step back. A young officer approached the box with gloves and equipment I'd only seen on TV. He leaned in, adjusted a small scope, then froze. Detective, he said, his voice unsteady. You need to see this. They cleared the house. Neighbors gathered outside, whispering. I stood in the front yard, Daniel's arm wrapped around me, my legs threatening to give out. When the detective finally came back, her face was pale. Mrs. Carter, she said, that box contained dozens of brown recluse spiders. They were deliberately starved and positioned to scatter when the lid was opened. I felt dizzy. If I had opened it, you likely wouldn't have survived, she said gently. The investigation moved fast after that. The box had been custom-made. The spiders traced to an exotic dealer. Ryan's name surfaced again and again. Then came the worst part. The detective sat us down and slid a document across the table. Your brother took out a life insurance policy on you 2 weeks ago. He's listed as the sole beneficiary. I stared at the paper, my vision blurring. In that moment, it stopped being about money. My brother hadn't sent me a gift. He'd sent me a deadline. They didn't let us stay in the house that night. After the box was taken away, the officers walked Daniel and me back inside, only long enough to grab a few essentials. Clothes, my laptop, my toothbrush. Everything else was left exactly where it was, like my life had been paused mid-sentence. As we stepped out, one of the officers cleared his throat. Ma'am, there's something else you need to see. He led us into the garage. My car sat there like it always had. Ordinary, quiet, harmless, until the mechanic crouched down and pointed his flashlight beneath the frame. The brake line's been cut, he said. Not all the way through, just enough to fail under pressure. I felt my knees buckle. When? I whispered. Recently, he replied. Another day or two, maybe a hard stop on the highway. It wouldn't have held. Daniel wrapped an arm around me, but even his grip couldn't ground me anymore. My brother hadn't just planned one way to hurt me. He'd planned backups. That was when my phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but the detective nodded. Put it on speaker. A woman's voice came through, shaking. Is this Emily? Yes. This is Claire, she said. Ryan's girlfriend. He doesn't know I'm calling. I found things on his computer. The room went silent. She told us everything in broken sentences. Search histories, articles, notes, dates. screenshots of plans mapped around my schedule. When I jogged, when Daniel worked late, when I was alone. He kept saying it had to be quick, she sobbed, before the deadline. What deadline? I asked, even though part of me already knew. The detective answered, the will. She explained it carefully, like she was afraid I'd break again. If I died within 30 days of receiving the inheritance, the estate would automatically pass to the next living relative. Ryan. I checked the calendar. My breath caught in my throat. 5 days. That night, they moved us to a safe location. A quiet house, unmarked, guarded. I barely slept, replaying every conversation I'd ever had with my brother, wondering how long he'd been waiting for this moment. The next morning, the lawyer arrived. He looked shaken, like someone who had just realized he'd been standing on thin ice without knowing it. He carried a sealed envelope and a small metal case. These were left with instructions, he said, from your aunt. I was told not to open them unless you were in danger. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. The letter was written in Eleanor's careful handwriting. My dearest Emily, if you're reading this before the 30 days are over, then Ryan has shown you exactly who he is. I had to sit down. She wrote about the missing items, the strange taste in her tea. The fatigue doctors couldn't explain until she insisted on testing. Small doses. Repeated. Deliberate. Ryan had been poisoning her for months, but Eleanor hadn't panicked. She'd planned. She documented everything, medical records, video, bank statements. She hired a private investigator with federal ties. She rewrote her will, not as generosity, but as bait. The inheritance I'd received wasn't the real one. That money was a trap. The lawyer opened the metal case. Inside were drives, documents, and a single page marked clearly, Trust Activation Clause. The real estate, the accounts, over $2 million, locked away unless and until Ryan was arrested. I pressed a hand to my mouth, tears streaming down my face. She'd known. All along. She'd known Ryan would escalate, that greed would make him reckless, that the only way to stop him was to let him believe he was winning. I wasn't just a victim. I was the line he crossed. The detective met my eyes. Your aunt built this case for years. And me? I asked softly. What was I to her? The detective didn't hesitate. You were who she was protecting. In that moment, the fear shifted. It didn't disappear, but it hardened into something else, something steady. Ryan thought he was hunting me. He had no idea he'd walked straight into her final plan. Ryan didn't arrive quietly. I knew something was wrong the moment the detective's radio crackled and every face in the room went tense at once. We were still inside the safe house, the curtains drawn, the air thick with waiting. Someone whispered my name. Someone else said, "He's close, closer than I expected." "He didn't fly," the detective muttered. "He drove." My phone buzzed in my hand, a text from an unknown number. "I'm outside. We need to talk. Family should handle this privately." My chest tightened, but my voice surprised me with how steady it sounded. "I'll talk to him." Daniel turned sharply. "No. I have to," I said quietly. "This ends now." They fitted the microphone beneath my collar, slipped an earpiece into my ear. The instructions were simple. Keep him talking. Don't provoke him. If I felt unsafe, say one word. Coffee. The doorbell rang. When I opened the door, Ryan stood there smiling, like this was a casual visit. He held flowers in one hand. In the other, a small ornate box wrapped in red paper. "There she is," he said warmly. "You look tired, Em. Stress will do that." "How did you find me?" I asked. He shrugged. "You always were predictable." He stepped inside, eyes scanning the room, measuring distances. He placed the box on the table between us. "I brought you something special," he said. "One last gift." My heart pounded. "Another one?" He laughed. "Relax. I just want us to be honest. You and me, no cops, no lawyers." I met his gaze. "Was that honest? The box you sent before?" His smile faltered for half a second. "What box?" "The one that almost killed me." Silence. Then he sighed, like a man tired of pretending. "You weren't supposed to be so careful." The words landed heavier than any confession. "You planned it," I said. "All of it. The box, the car, the insurance." He didn't deny it. He stepped closer instead. Do you know how long I've lived in your shadow? You, the good one, the sweet one. Eleanor loved you. Everyone did. She trusted you, I said, and you poisoned her. That did it. His mask dropped completely. She was already dying, he snapped. I just sped things up. Same thing would have happened to you. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to keep going. So this is about money? It's about what I deserve, he said, grabbing the box. And I'm still 5 days short of losing it. I glanced at the box. What's inside? He smiled again. This time it was ugly. Something faster. That was when I said it. I could really use some coffee right now. The room exploded into motion. The doors burst open. Officers flooded in from every direction. Ryan spun, eyes wide, dropping the box as hands slammed him to the floor. He screamed my name as they cuffed him. You set me up! I watched, shaking, as they dragged him away. I felt nothing like victory, just relief. Heavy, quiet relief. The trial didn't take long. The evidence was overwhelming. The recordings, the documents, Eleanor's meticulous records. Ryan was sentenced to decades behind bars. When it was over, I stood alone at Eleanor's grave, holding sunflowers. You did it, I whispered. You stopped him. I used the trust the way she'd intended. I built an organization to help victims of family abuse. Quietly, carefully, with people who knew what it felt like not to be believed. My life didn't go back to normal. It became better. Money didn't turn my brother into a monster. It just revealed the one he'd always been. And family, I learned, isn't blood. It's the people who choose to protect you when it matters most. If you listen to this story from beginning to end, I'd love to know what you think. Did this story move you? What kind of stories should I share next? Leave a comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more real stories from women who survived the unthinkable.